Very good to be here. Thanks everyone for the turnout. It looks like a great forum, plenty of people outside, and hopefully we can give you a very good update on Centaurus Metals and what we've been doing with the Jaguar Nickel Sulphide Project. You've seen a few of these today, read them at your leisure. But just looking at Centaurus, it's been a very busy year for the company. We've done a lot of de-risking work, and we're putting ourselves in a position where we can make an investment decision through the middle of the year. So I'll go through some of those specifics, some of the attractions of our project. We are one of the few ways to play nickel on the ASX. There's not many left around. We're probably the only real nickel sulphide opportunity on the ASX these days, and it's to do with where our cost structure will sit once operational, and that's a function of being in Brazil and accessing cheap power. So we've got a large resource base, over 1.2 million tonnes in the contained nickel metal. Of that, we've been able to put together feasibility study work that enables a 15-year project life just from the open pit, running about 20,000 tonnes of nickel per year. We're going through the partnering process. On the equity side, we're running a concurrent debt funding process, and that's really the last piece of the puzzle for us to be able to make investment decision through the course of the middle of the year. We've de-risked the project enormously from a licensing perspective. All of the environmental licenses that we need to build the project are in place. I'll touch on that a little bit further, but also have our mining lease now granted. So feel like we're in really good shape. But I guess when talking about a project like ours and where it's at, we've got to talk a little bit about Indonesia, a little bit about where the nickel market is. This chart really just shows you where nickel prices have been over the last 20 years. And that flat line there is where our operating costs are going to be. So we feel very confident about where we are. We'll be bottom quartile operating costs. We can compete in the market all day, every day with Indonesia, and that's probably why we're still around and kicking, given where the market's been over the last sort of 12 months. So just focusing in on that area, it's been pretty much a flat line. There's been no momentum in nickel. That's been due to an oversupply. But as I said, we've done a lot of work de-risking our project during that period of time. And you've just seen in the last 6 to 8 weeks an uptick in the nickel price. And that's really been about the Indonesians curbing the mining of ore in that, in that market, which is, implying that there's going to be a restriction on supply. And that's really been something that I've been saying that was going to happen for some time. It's probably taken longer to play out than what might have thought, but it's put us in a good position now where you're starting to see sort of $17,000, $18,000 a tonne nickel as compared to something around 15,000. As I said, at 15,000 we would still be making money, but at 18,000 we feel like you get a lot more sentiment, a lot more attraction coming into the funding of the project, which is obviously the critical piece for us right now. So the backdrop of that, we're sitting at about 350 million market cap. We've got a relatively tight register with the top 20 owning 70-odd%. We've got good coverage, but it's really been a register that's been devoid of institutional interest, and that's something that I think we're starting to see change. The institutions are coming back into this market, and I think that will see our share price move higher, particularly as we fund the project. Brazil's a great jurisdiction. We've been there a long time there. We know what we're doing. The mining system is a very good one. There's no government participation in the projects. The royalty system is well known. We avail ourselves of a very low tax rate in the location where we are, down around 15%, which obviously has positive economics for us. But as I said, one of the key attributes in Brazil is that most of their power is coming from hydro sources, and that's on the grid, which we can access, and that delivers clean power, but also very cheap power, which underlies our operating costs being in the first quartile for any nickel project globally. Looking to where we are, we're in the Carajás mineral province of northern Brazil. It's probably one of the prolific mineral belts globally. That area on the map's probably 150 kilometres by 100 kilometres. Some of the biggest mines in the world there, the Salobo copper mine of Vale, S11D, Onça Puma. So we know that we can build the project that we're looking at. There's a TSX company called Ero Copper, just finished building a 4 million tonne copper float plant about 40 kilometres from where we are. So we know that these projects are very doable in the region where we are. It's farmland. We've accessed the land that we need to be able to deliver the project. The yellow line on that map is the power line that we're going to connect into. So a 230 kV line, we need to add about a 40 kilometre spur off that. But as I said, that's what gives us a very low power cost, around 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So looking at Jaguar in particular, I'll touch a bit more on each of these points, but it's basically ready to go from a licensing point of view. It's got scale about it, both from the resource base, but also the production profile. CapEx and OpEx are extremely competitive, putting us in a good position to fund the project, and the economics really do stack up for a nickel sulphide project, which there wouldn't be too many nickel projects over the last 3 or 4 years that would have been able to say that. So each of those, licensing-wise, from an environmental point of view, we've got our preliminary licence, we've got our installation licence. That enables us to be able to build the project. With the grant of the installation licence, we've now received our mining lease back in October last year. So pretty much from the approvals perspective, we're ready to go. There's nothing in our way to actually stop this project moving ahead, licensing-wise. From a resource-based point of view, we've stopped drilling a couple of years ago. The resource is already a very significant one at 1.2 million tonnes contained. You can see from that bar chart, the last of those, the gold is the measured and indicated component of that resource, so probably 85% of that resource is now sitting in the measured and indicated category. That's what's allowed us to put the reserve base together, and that's come through the economic studies that we completed last year. There's about 50 million tonnes running at around 0.78% nickel, and that's giving us about 400,000 tonnes contained in reserves, which we've used as the basis of our economic studies. You can see from those three-dimensional images there that the mineralisation does go below the base of the pits. We've drilled mineralisation as deep as 1,000 metres in this area. We're not saying that the underground will go down that deep, but we certainly know that there's economic stopes that would go underneath the pits, and we think that that'll give us plenty of upside exposure when we actually come to do that work. This is where we sit from a cost curve perspective. The negative cost there down the bottom on the left is Norilsk, obviously with very big PGE credits, giving them negative cash costs. But really all the gold bars there are the lateritic nickel plays coming out of Indonesia. You can see there's a lot of them. The green bars are the sulphide projects. There's not as many of those around anymore. But Jaguar as a nickel sulphide project is in the right part of that cost curve, and that is one of the real compelling reasons why you'd be looking at an investment in Centaurus from a nickel exposure perspective. Nothing overly complex about the site layout. The pits there through the middle, what we call Jaguar, run over about 3 kilometres of strike. So, you know, it's a relatively large mining area. But yeah, it's a simple float plant, nothing complicated about it, looking at about a 3.5 million tonne per annum float plant to get this project through to deliver about 20,000 tonnes of nickel. That process flow sheet enables us to produce a nickel concentrate running at about 30%. And that's probably doesn't exist anywhere in the globe at the moment. And the reason for that is that we suppress all the other sulphides through the flotation process, but the nickel species that we're dealing with is a millerite. Millerite is one of the highest tenor nickel sulphide species around. Once we take everything else out, we've got a very high grade nickel concentrate. That's favourable from a logistics point of view. We only need to move about 65,000 tonnes of concentrate each year to deliver that 20,000 tonnes of nickel into the market. So from where we are, that we feel like that's another, key benefit to delivering the low operating costs for this project. So a couple of slides here just showing the production profile. As I've said, it's about a 3.5 million tonne per annum throughput each year. That's going to deliver us sort of 20 to 22,000 tonnes of nickel for the first 7 or 8 years, pulls back to about 16,000, 17,000 tonnes of nickel after that. But I reckon that's the point in time where we'll look to be bringing the underground on stream and keep that production profile above 20,000 tonnes of nickel. And there's not too many projects around that are delivering that sort of production profile. And importantly, that delivers very strong cash flows. So at the economics that we used in the feasibility study, it's running out about $170 million free cash flow per year. I guess put that against the backdrop of where our market cap is, suggests that once we get this project funding, there is very good upside by investing in Centaurus and getting exposure to the Jaguar project. The funding, clearly the biggest piece of the puzzle right now. It's the thing that's going to probably deliver the most value in the shortest period of time. We're looking to make the investment decision by the middle of the year. We're running concurrent debt and equity funding processes. From the equity point of view, we're really looking to bring a partner in at the minority level at a project level, getting a much better look-through valuation on the project compared to where our market cap is, and concurrently working with groups now on the debt funding side to pull that all together, enabling us to make that investment decision through the middle of the year. You can look at that sort of schedule in due course, but yeah, pointing out sort of around that July, August time from making the investment decision, and then a whole process of the build out, probably taking us about 2 years, enabling nickel production, first nickel production towards the end of 2028. So separately, we are at an Explorers Conference. We're building out a pipeline of projects in Brazil. The Boa Nova copper project is in the Carajás mineral province as well, very close to the main hub of Parapebas, very close to the old Antas Norte plant that used to be owned by Avanco, that became Oz Minerals, that became BHP, and is now held by a group called Corex. So it doesn't need to be a massive project to get it up and running. There's a number of processing avenues in and around where the project is. There's an amazing amount of copper in the belt through the Carajás, and that's why we like it so much, to be able to continue to do exploration while we're developing Jaguar, that we can keep that exploration moving and start to build out a pipeline of projects. We've been working on that project now for a little while, probably about 18 months of drilling. We've had some early stage success in that drilling. So when you look at that tenement map, through the middle is our original tenement, what we call Boa Nova. That's where most of those drill holes have come from. And then there's that tenement on the north, which we only acquired in November last year. And we're doing all the low-level work there, doing the soils, doing some EM, doing some mag work. We think that that's got great prospectivity. We think it's going to be very similar to what we've seen in the work that we've done to date at Boa Nova, and it's really allowing us to expand our copper footprint. So very exciting times that we've got a fantastic nickel project that we're working up, but also have some very good quality copper exploration to work on, and build that pipeline out over time. So tier one asset with Jaguar, it really is a high quality project. The cash flows that can generate from this project are going to be enormous. We think that the way to crack those cash flows open is by the funding. So I guess looking at it from an investment point of view, which is probably why everyone's here today, is, get that funding done, really says that the Centaurus share price should move higher relative to where our market cap is today. And really, there's not much more to do. Like, it's really a funding closeout conversation, and when we achieve that, we expect a pretty significant re-rate. We do that in conjunction with developing our sort of pipeline of assets in the copper exploration and our sort of legacy iron ore asset, and we feel like Centaurus is in a very, very good position to make a very strong success in Brazil. We're out here at booth 44. If you want to chat on that anymore, come and let us know. Thank you very much.